What up, y'all? Thank y'all for tuning in. This is another episode of Ratchet Pastor Sermons with Bugzy Lavoe. Today's episode, we have a very special guest, DJ EFN.
What it could be, homies, what it should be. This is your boy, N-O-R-E.
What up, it's DJ EFN.
And this military crazy wall, crazy good. Crazy drink chat.
Now, EFN is a co-host of the super successful Drink Champs podcast with Nori. It's recently been picked up as a TV show by Revolt, and it also has deals with Mass Appeal and Tidal. Drink Champs has had guests on like Nas, Diddy, 50 Cent, Trick Daddy, Master P, and more. EFN was also a legendary Miami DJ. He was a mixtape DJ for over 2 decades. EFN also heads the Crazy Hood Film Academy. They have spawned a successful Coming Home series highlighting where hip-hop has grown internationally. They have Coming Home Cuba, Coming Home Peru, and Coming Home Haiti. We are super excited to have him on.
There you go, Sonny. Sonny, open this first.
Don't ask me what's in my cup. It's my motherfucking cup. What up? It's your boy Bugzy Lavoe, and I'm Bishop. Just kidding. With an extensive background in podcasting, interviewing, and radio, I travel all through South Florida finding out the who's who, the what's what, and the come-ups, and helping them tell their stories. Thank you for tuning in. This is Ratchet Pastor Sermons with Bugzy Lavoe. What up? It's your boy Bugzy Lavoe. I'm here with a very, very special guest. This is someone who I recently got acquainted to probably in the last 4 or 5 years. But like, even though I just got acquainted to him really quickly, he's like someone that I've looked to as like from far away, from like a mentor and just someone who I definitely watch carefully, like his next few moves. Without further ado, this is EFN, DJ EFN from overall Miami, the Miami legend scene, and also from Drink Champs.
Good looking at what's going on, man.
Real quick, man, I just kind of wanted to get into like, you know, one of the main topics I want to talk to you about is just overall not only just the Miami scene, but the South Florida scene overall.
Okay.
So I had like I interviewed Ice Billy and Berg.
Okay, yeah. Sure.
Like a few years ago, and it was something that we talked about a lot. Was like, you know, how South Florida isn't like a New York or like a LA. And one thing that he stressed to me was because, and maybe you can like, you know, dive deeper, is like there's no structure to like the entertainment industry out here, you know?
Right.
And I want to get like, what is your thoughts on someone that's been around for?
Yeah, it's a complex city. It's the issues that we have start with just the fact that we're a city that's always changing, like the demographic. People are always coming from different countries, from different parts of the country. You know,
like a snowbird.
Yeah, it's a transient city. So because of that, you know, you'll have people that move here that say that they're from Miami and they don't know like the people that are like the artists have been putting in work for the past like 10 years or something. But then these people, for whatever, maybe they come already, they pop in on social media or whatever, and they're like, yeah, I'm Miami, I'm repping Miami, and then their followers think that they know what's going on, but they don't mention like whoever was really putting in work. So that's an issue that we've had since I started in like '93. You know, it's just it's constantly changing. So if you're an artist working here, it's like you're constantly proving yourself to people, or even like, for example, like. This is actually a good example. So we had like this newspaper, the Miami New Times. Okay. And they would do a lot of like articles supporting local artists.
Yeah, they have a list like every year, right?
Yeah, every year. Yeah, they have a list. And so they're pretty good at it. But what happens is that every couple of years they change editors. Yeah. And they change writers. Yeah. And then these writers and these editors are usually not from Miami. Yeah. Yeah. So they come in here and they just do some basic, you know, research, and they'll just grab whoever's at the surface. Yeah. And then they put them on the best of Miami's list or whatever. And then all of a sudden, that's like concrete history. Mm-hmm. You Google something, it shows you who's going. And then all of a sudden, it's like history got erased every couple of years when they change editors. Yeah. So that's kind of like the issue we have. And yeah, in terms of that, then you don't have a structure because people keep moving in and out. So you don't have like a set structure that's here long term going on unless you have people like a Luke. you know, or myself. We try to like be like people that have just been here and cornerstones of the city. Yeah.
So, you know, just kind of get into your history a little bit. Just kind of dive into, you know, how you started and what era, like, you know, what year.
So I started my company, Crazy Hood Productions, right out of high school, 1993. And just like boom out the gate. But I started it, but didn't mean that I didn't have my crew. We didn't have no money. We didn't nothing. We didn't know what. We just knew we wanted to do something to rep the city.
But you've always been a DJ.
No, I didn't have. I wanted to be a DJ, you know, but I didn't have the funds to buy turntables. Yeah. Back then, the Source magazine in the back, they had this like DJ starter kit. Okay. And that's like what I got, like maybe in '94.
Like a rapper starter kit.
Yeah, so it was like 2 wacky ass Gemini turntables and a mixer. But you couldn't tell me nothing about those turntables. That was the best thing, you know, since sliced bread. So, I mean, it wasn't until a year after we started the company that I started DJing. The first thing we did as a company was do a party. Okay. Actually, not too far from here. It was a warehouse jam. Because back then, there wasn't clubs playing hip-hop like that. Right. Like, there was just warehouse jams or house parties. And that was the first thing we did as a company. And then shortly after, I got turntables. And shortly after, started doing mixtapes. And then things started picking up. You
guys would also book artists?
Yeah, that's how I met Nori. I was the first person to book Nori in Miami when you know, after the CNN project for the NORE. I was the first, you know, my crew, we booked them in Miami.
So then did you get big into like, were you always more into like the production and just overall just advanced, or were you like always like, or did you go heavy like to the DJing?
Yeah, the DJing I think is what kind of like propelled the company and everything we were doing, because once I started doing mixtapes, like I was trying to look for a niche. The club and the party scene was already, there was DJs that were doing that. Yeah. The turntable list, we had one of the biggest DJs in the world, DJ Craze, is from Miami. He's from this area right here that we're in right now. And then you had Khaled was coming in a little bit later in like the mid 90s. And then he's doing the radio stuff. So the radio wasn't a thing. So I was like, okay, nobody's doing the mixtapes. Yeah. So I kind of found that niche, and then that kind of like helped us go. Not only did it make sense in Miami locally, then it went national, then it went international. Okay. And so it kind of like, started propelling us.
Did you also work closely with the artist Garcia?
Garcia, he's one of my artists. He's still down with the crew.
Wasn't he on MTV's Welcome to My Block, Miami?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, we were all on that episode.
Yeah. That was one, they should bring those back. I don't know if they can.
Yeah.
But I feel like that definitely helped shut up. Because I'm from Fort Myers. So
okay.
Back in those,
we used to do a lot of shows out there.
I remember Nori came.
We were there.
To the radio. I think you guys were there. Yeah. And you guys were talking about like OJ, like there was like a.
Yeah, OJ was at that. It was the radio stations.
105.5. They had like their.
We took a picture of OJ backstage.
Yeah. I remember that. I asked him a question when he came.
Yeah.
For that. But so fast forward, how did you and Nori connect? Because I'm sure you meet a lot of artists all the time. But how did you guys build that bond?
So before that booking that I mentioned, Capone got locked up when the CNN album came out, right? So Nori was the only one doing the promo tour for it. My boy Phil, who now he's a part of Headliner Group, which does Live on Sundays and all that. He's one of the biggest promoters in the world in terms of hip hop. He was promoting whatever club that Nori was gonna go and do an appearance at to promote the CNN album. Okay. And back in those days, in the early to mid 90s, it wasn't like the internet, social media. You had to go and do in-stores. Mm-hmm. So they would take artists to like record stores and so we had a store, Crazy Goods. It was a clothing store, hip hop clothing store. So he brought him over to my store, and I had a machine. Actually, the machine's right up there. It's a digital 4-track, and I would have instrumentals in there. And when artists would come through, I'd have them drop freestyles for my mixtapes. So Nori came through, dropped freestyles, and there was chemistry. We hit it off. Yeah. And we kept in contact. He was like almost on every mixtape after that. And then I was the first person to bring him down to Miami to do a solo show. Mm-hmm. Then when Capone came out, they hired me to set up the show for Capone's first show, you know, Capone Home Show. Yeah. I did that. And then we just grew, and we just became really good friends. And our crews, you know, everybody, like the whole crew, we just worked together. Yeah. And, you know, we went on tour with him, everything. Down here too, right? Eventually moved, and he moved into this area where I live in, which is Kendall. Yeah. He lived down the block. I used to have another studio down the block from here. He worked out of that studio. Out of that studio is where the beginnings of like the precursor to Drink Champ started happening.
What? Okay, so let's fast forward to that now. What did you think Drink Champs was gonna turn? Did you always plan it to to where it is now?
Nah, I didn't know. Neither of us knew it was gonna blow up like that, like pop off.
Real quick, sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
I read I heard an interview where you were like, you guys were talking about it, and you kept saying that you kept buying the copyright to that name because you knew you had a feeling it was gonna turn into something.
Yeah, I mean, what I did is years before we knew what we were gonna do with the name or what I knew, you know, we used to say Drink Champs as like a thing. Like we drank a lot at the office.
Yeah.
So if you couldn't handle your liquor, you're like, you ain't a drink champ.
Right.
That was just a thing. And so I thought that was just a cool slogan.
Yeah.
So I grabbed the .com, I grabbed the Twitter, the Instagram, I copywrote it. I eventually got my boy Scam to do a logo. He did the shit on Eminem's album.
Okay.
He's from Carroll City, from out here. Does a lot of work with us. So I had all of that set up before I even knew it would be a podcast. Then when it became eventually we were ready to do a podcast, which that's a whole other story by itself, parallel to the name.
Yeah.
When Nori was finally ready, I was like, let's call it Drink Champs. Like, all right, let's go. You know, I got the logo. All right, let's do it. You know, yeah.
But how did you? Okay, so when you guys started the podcast was. I was just talking to him like podcast. Even to this day, is still fairly new. Like I remember when I first started doing a podcast, the only hip hop podcasts out were Combat Jack,
yep,
and
Juan Ep.
Yeah. That's it. There was nothing else.
Yep.
So what made you want to start getting into podcasts?
So I'm gonna try to take you back a little bit more with the Drink Champ story. Prior, like I said, it's parallel to the name. Before the name was added to it. So we had in our studio here, we were doing a weekly show called Militant Crazy Raw Radio. Okay. Crazy name that Nori made up. Yeah. He wanted to mash all our names up, and that was a weekly show on XM satellite. Okay. Before it was Sirius XM. Yeah, that's how far back that was. Yeah. Then they merged Sirius XM, and then we were on that. And we did that show for I think 2 or 3 years. And it was fun. Actually, there's old clips on YouTube, and we start the show the same way we start Drink Champs. You know, Nori, EFN, make some noise, Tiger Bone, everything. So we stopped doing that because Nori went on tour to Europe for CNN, a new CNN album. I was managing a group called Mayday. They got signed to Tech 9. We went on tour. And so we both got busy. We weren't making money off of that. Right. We just did it for fun. And I was always trying to figure out how could we do something similar, but that was like a weekly show we had to turn in and had to come out every Thursday. I want to do something a little bit more loose, easier for our schedule. Yeah. And I had a friend, Godfrey, who did a podcast called Gamertag. He still does it, Gamertag Radio. He's like in the podcast Hall of Fame. He's been doing it forever.
I just followed him on Instagram.
Yeah. So he was always telling me, you should podcast. And at that point, I was telling Nori, I was interested, but Nori was like podcasting for hip hop.
Explain to people.
No, they just thought it was some nerdy shit, some internet nerdy shit. Yeah. Guys from a lot, especially rappers from the early 90s, mid 90s, they looked at the internet and podcast. Yeah, that's weirdo shit. That's nerd shit. And I was like, nah, man, I think this is, we should do this. And then my boy got signed eventually. It took 3 to 5 years. It's somewhere within that amount of time for Nori to finally get on board. Right. And then my boy, he got distribution for his podcast through CBS. Okay. So we were getting offers from the same cats that do Combat Jacks, that were doing his, and we were gonna go with them. But then I told Nori, I said, my boy, he's gonna connect us with CBS. That's an option. He goes, it just sounds really great, sounds big. CBS sounds just amazing. So I was like, yeah, it's a good publicity stunt, I don't know about business, but let's see what they offer.
But low key though, in the podcasting world, you guys and Rap Radar put CBS on because I didn't even know they had
For sure, and Rap Radar had been there actually when we get to the building. So it's funny because when we hit up CBS, it wasn't automatic. They were like, you need to record 2 demos. Okay. So I'm like, God damn, So we do, the first one we actually record is Kenny Anderson, the basketball player from Left Rack. And the second one is Fat Joe. Right. Fat Joe ends up being the first one we released. But we showed them the demos. They're like, oh, we love it. Yeah. And then I asked them, what do you think a semi-successful, I want to be realistic about what to expect. How do we make this where it brings in some kind of revenue? Right. I didn't need to be rich off of it. Just worth my time,
I feel like that's the number one podcasting question.
So, so they tell me at the time, because some of these data points have changed, but they said, look, if you could get between 30 to 60,000 listens in 3 weeks for one episode, you're making a couple grand in a month, And I was like, oh, okay. I mean, that seemed kind of a lot though. I was like, we never podcast, so I don't know, So I'm like, I don't know. Okay, let's see what happens. Yo, Fat Joe dropped. 300,000 the first week. It grew so fast that CBS wasn't prepared. They didn't know what to do with it. The style that we had was kind of like, so unorthodox and crazy. The sales team, because CBS had like the real CBS sales team. They didn't know how to sell us.
They were on some like NPR shit.
Yeah, they didn't know what to do. Like no advertiser. They were like, I don't know. This guy's talking about eating ass. How many, birth control, like abortions have you had? Like they're like, bro, Johnson & Johnson's not going for this.
It's funny, like you look at her when you.
Yeah. So it was crazy, and we didn't get like we were like one of the. I think we were the biggest podcast at the time when we launched. In terms of listenership, and we didn't get paid till 6 months down the line, till finally they figured out, what to do,
Okay, so fast forward, you guys leave CBS.
Yeah.
And you go, do you guys go straight to Revolt, or it's like a...
So we never left anywhere podcast-wise and then went to Revolt. There's been a huge misunderstanding with our audience, and I understand it. The Revolt situation was strictly a TV deal. Of our audio podcast. So we've always maintained the audio podcast as an audio podcast release. And it's separate from our TV release. Okay. Even separate from like a digital deal, which might be on YouTube or whatever. So CBS originally had the first digital deal with us. Okay. So they were publishing our stuff and we did a revenue share on YouTube with them. Then Revolt came in, they did a test deal with us. We did 6 episodes for TV. Once that did well, they came back, and then this is at the time that we're already like kind of like ending our relationship with CBS. We're gonna go somewhere else for our podcast. Yeah. So it gave the opportunity for Revolt to say, well, we'll make a deal for TV and YouTube releases, and that's where that happened. And then fast forward, we went to a couple different podcast networks. Fast forward to now, our most recent deal includes, which is the first of its kind for podcasting, is Tidal, mass appeal for just the audio podcast, and then Revolt for the TV and digital as well. Digital meaning YouTube.
Yeah, I feel like, podcasting is coming to a space to where other companies are recognizing the value, right? So Joe Budden had that Spotify deal. You guys have this type of deal.
Yeah.
I think Charlemagne, they got something working over there. And I feel like, even Joe Rogan, outside of hip hop, I feel like definitely it's taking some time, but podcasting is definitely like coming into something.
Well, Joe Rogan is probably one of the like pioneers of like really doing it big. Like he's killing it.
Yeah,
man.
he has like the old school like 3-hour podcast.
Yeah.
Where, so now let's keeping it moving. Where do you guys see this going next? Like, do you feel like, I don't know, like, do you guys do like a live shows, or you guys kind of just do like
We've tried live shows. It doesn't really work for Drink Champs just because of the nature of how Drink Champs really is what you see on video, what you hear. It really is that. It's just. Y'all have
an audience though. It's just not like.
It's just our boys,
right?
And sometimes as a big artist, our boys bring their boys. Yeah. That's really what it is. Yeah. It's tough for live, man. But we've done a couple. We did the Roots Picnic. Which, we were the headliner for their podcast stage. Yeah. We did one for, I think it was for All-Star Weekend with Rick Ross. We've done a couple. It's been mixed. Some have done really well. Some have been a little awkward for us. Yeah. So I don't know.
You think the energy is kind of, in a big room, the energy is kind of.
Yeah, it's a little bit, it's a little different for something like Drink. We're not like performance oriented for like, hey, you're sitting watching us. Hey, this is for you. It's more like it's about what's going on in the immediate room. Yeah. And we're all kind of like vibing, like drinking with your peoples, that's really what it is.
What's funny though is like you say that and it takes me back because I saw Joe Budden. He had a podcast last year. They went to the Fillmore, and it wasn't the same, man. It was very performance based. Like they were like singing songs and they were like playing a game. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like the podcast. It was something else. So I kind of see what you're saying in a live setting. It's probably be a little tricky to navigate.
Yeah.
So something else I want to talk about is usually I interview like artists and just more music based stuff, and this is music based also. But one thing I want to ask is like the number one question is like what advice do you give to like a young media or like a young podcaster that's trying to turn this into like a reality, that's trying to bring in revenue?
Right.
Like, there's always people that say, just keep going. But on the flip side, I know people who have like 300 episodes in and they never made $1. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, what advice do you have to share?
one, I would say don't quit your day job. Yeah. Everybody says, but it's real. Yeah. Like have a job, like do some other shit that makes you money, and let this be your hobby until it makes its own money. Mm-hmm. Now, while you're figuring out if this is the right concept for your show, give it a realistic time frame. Like say to yourself, all right, so this is the type of show I do. This is the concept I have. Let's see if it resonates with people. Right. And you say, you got to give it some real time. Like I'm gonna give it a year. Right. And you got to be consistent. If you're not consistent, then it all is out the window. You got to be consistent. It's got to be bi-weekly or weekly, whatever, but it's got to be there. Mm-hmm. And even if you have 5 listeners, they got to count on that shit whenever you say it's gonna drop. Right. You give it that year, and then you evaluate. All right, what's the growth been? Look at the data that all these platforms are giving you. All right, well, maybe there's room for me to keep doing this and grow it. Maybe it's not really growing. Yeah. Maybe it's time to change the concept. Right. And that's what I would do. I would just keep, if you like just podcasting, if that's what you're doing or anything you're doing, just give it some time to really like flesh itself out and then evaluate it and then decide, do I want to continue to invest in this and do it the way it is, or do I just want to change, strategy and maybe change the concept, maybe add a different co-host to it, something like that. And then, set yourself a budget with your day job that you have. Don't kill yourself. And then always put a little bit of marketing budget into it, whether it be through social media stuff, graphics or whatever, if you're traveling, have a little travel budget. Right. Go to conferences. That's a huge thing I think people need to do. That's in the beginning, that was a game changer for me because we had How Can I Be Down that came to Miami. It was a big music conference. Yeah. Go to some conferences, and try to network with people and try to meet different people, try to interview people outside of your regular world. And that's it. That's really, there's no magic formula to it because really it takes a long time. It takes a long time. And something like, I tell people Drink Champs to me was lightning in a bottle. We came in at a perfect time. That's not going to happen again. The way it happened for Drink Champs. It takes a lot more work than what happened for us. It just happened to happen for us. We were just lucky. Honestly, we were lucky. We had a good concept and it came at the right time when podcasting was just starting to get on its feet and it popped.
Okay, last question. We started off this conversation talking about structure. Now you with the heights that you guys have reached, do you feel like is it something y'all want to do starting off like a podcast network or like a media network or something in South Florida, like providing that?
I mean, I've been, it sucks because I've involved people and I'm never able to do, you see how my schedule changed today. I'm trying to do like just on a local level, like podcast networking events where local podcasters come and they can ask me any questions and we could talk and we could all maybe we could exchange interviews with each other or whatever just to help build the local podcast community. Yeah. That's something that I want to do. And yeah, I mean, I think that Drink Champs, we've been wanting to do a network, like a real distribution network.
Yeah, I heard.
We've been saying it, but Nori to me prematurely talked about it. We didn't have all the right parts ready to go, but eventually, hopefully, we'll be able to get it off the ground.
Okay. All right, man. This is Bugzy Lavoe. Thank y'all for tuning in. Thank you, EFN.
No, of course.
A pleasure, of course. And that's it.
Yeah.